Hello. Okay, today we're going to read two chapters. So I'm going to read a chapter, ask a question, read a chapter, ask some questions. Okay, so we're still reading Fish in a Tree. We are about halfway through. Today we're going to read chapter 27 and 28. All right, chapter 27, Half-Baked Afternoon. Keisha invites Albert and me over to her house for a surprise. When I arrive, Albert is already there and Keisha is wearing a baker's hat and apron. "So when do we eat?" Albert asks. "No free ride here, Albert. We have to cook first," Keisha says, putting a cookbook on the table. Albert seems disappointed. "You'll be able to eat, don't worry, and in the meantime, think of this as a science experiment. So it's two of your most favorite things, Albert." I'm pretty happy until she opens the cookbook, slides it over to me, and says, "You're in charge." I'm in charge? Of what? The recipe. What do you think? What? Is she kidding? And Albert can be in charge of rolling the dough. Going to try cookie dough today to see if the letters cook at a similar rate to cake. I'm freaking out over here to have to be in charge of this book. I'd rather be in charge of teaching cats to play hockey. And my mind spins into that mind movie. When I start laughing, Keisha asks me, "What am I doing?" I have to shrug. I push the picture of a goalie cat with skates and a mouthguard out of my head. "Allie," Keisha pokes me. "Yeah?" I ask, "What's the first thing?" Albert appears next to me. "I'd rather do the book. You want to trade, Allie? You can roll out the dough." "Sure, Albert, if that's what you'd rather do. I don't mind switching." Albert begins reading the ingredients while I roll out the cookie dough. It's sticky and hard to roll. Keisha points to a package of flour. "Hey, sprinkle some of that on." I manage to get the dough rolled out, but I have my doubts about all this. I look at the alphabet cookie cutters she used to make letters. "What do you want me to spell?" "Well, the letters are kind of big for cupcakes." I'm sorry, I lost my spot. "Well, the letters are kind of big for cupcakes, so it can only be 3-letter words. Spell whatever you want." I spell cow because it's the first word I think of. Then we stand the letters up in the bottom of each cupcake mold and cover them with batter. Once Keisha slides the first batch into the oven, Albert asks, "Can I have some milk?" Keisha shrugs. "Sure," she says, taking a glass and filling it. Albert gulps it all down and asks, "May I possibly have some more? We switched to water at home. I really miss milk." She hands him the gallon. "Help yourself." He sits with the milk and wraps his arm around it like he's protecting it. I laugh. "You're not getting that back, Keisha. I hope you know that." "I have a question," Albert says after licking the milk from his lips. "If you spell cow inside of a cupcake, can a vegetarian eat it?" "Boy," Keisha says, "you really take everything seriously, don't you?" "Hey," I turn to the oven, "is it supposed to be smoking like that?" Keisha pulls on a mitt. When she opens the door, smoke fills the kitchen. The cupcakes have oozed all over the tops of the pans and fallen on the bottom of the oven, and it's a mess. She groans. "Oh, man." "You should wait until the oven cools before wiping it," Albert says. Keisha turns to him. "Yeah, thanks, Albert." "You're welcome," he says, and she rolls her eyes. She's disappointed the cookie dough will not work for letters. She and Albert figure out that the cookie dough expanded more than they thought it would, and that's why there's such a big mess. But I just keep thinking that whenever I write something, it turns into a big mess. Okay, so that was the end of chapter 27. Now, this chapter kind of didn't have a lot going on in it. It kind of almost seems unimportant. Why do you think the author would put a chapter like that in this book? Why does it mean something? Is it just filling up some space? What do you think, or why do you think she used this chapter? Okay, write your answers down. Send that to me or Miss Whitener. And whenever you can hit pause to write if you need to, and whenever you're ready, we'll start chapters 27 when you hit unpause. Okay. All right, next chapter. Deal of a lifetime. "Allie," Mr. Daniels calls me to him as the class empties for lunch. "Yeah?" I ask, heading over. "So I've been thinking a lot about some of the answers you gave during discussions. I love it when you share your opinions." "Thanks," I say, wondering why he really called me up here. "And I love your thoughts on Roy G. Biv. I overheard you asking Suki about her grandfather and comparing him to yours. Well, Allie, I am impressed by you. I shrug. What am I going to say? That he's crazy if he thinks I have anything for brains but a pail full of grasshoppers? Really, you have some wonderful gifts, and your explanation of lonely and alone, that was clever. I glance up at him, stare at my shoes by the time I'm sorry. I glance up at him, but stare at my shoes by the time I answer. That was just because I know about those words, alone and lonely, that's all. It was just an unfortunate stroke of luck. He laughs. Unfortunate stroke of luck, huh? I nod. I see. Yeah. Allie, how many kids your age use that phrase, unfortunate stroke of luck? I feel like a fish in a wire cage rather than a tank. Can I go to lunch now? No, not just yet. I'm wondering, do you ever think one word, but a different one comes out of your mouth? Well, yeah, I guess I do. Does reading sometimes give you headaches? I nod. I'm a little nervous now. When you look at letters, do you ever see them move? I'm confused. Of course they do. They do. He is wide-eyed. I nod, but I'm not sure if I should. He just looks for me. He looks me for He just looks at me for a while, and I think I know how Keisha's cupcakes feel when she watches them in the oven. One more question, he says, and I shift on my weight. Have you ever heard of a game called chess? Yeah, I say, happier. It's from Alice in Wonderland Through the Looking Glass. My grandpa read it to me a gazillion times. It's a game that uses a checkerboard and the castle pieces, right? He brightens up. Yeah, that one. Do you know how to play? I shake my head. Well, do you want to learn? I don't know. Well, he says, leaning forward and resting his elbows on his knees, I think you'd like chess. I could show you how to play after school, if you'd like. I'd have to stay after school? He thinks for a second. Well, I always think of starting a chess club. I thought you could come first so I could teach you to play. If it works out well, we could invite other kids. It might be fun, something different. It's not like I was born yesterday. I know he's up to something. Teachers don't volunteer to stay after school to play games. I kind of want to say yes because Mr. Daniels is cool. And I don't think there is any reading stuff in chess. And my grandpa would have liked to know I could play. But it scares me a little. Well, I don't think so, but thanks anyway. He seems disappointed. I turn around and go. How about if I excuse you from homework for learning how to play? I stop like my feet are strapped to 1,000-pound blocks. Did he just say that? And I turn around. What's the catch? I ask. No catch. If you stay after to learn chess for a few days, I'll excuse you from homework on those days that you stay. Am I going to have to write a paper or something? No papers, promise. I just come in here and play a game and I get out of homework? No catch? Well, you can't tell anyone in class. I'll call your mom about it, though. He holds out his hands to give a shake. We have a deal then? Yeah, okay. I can't say no to that deal. Homework is only one step above death. I'm so happy about skipping some homework for that I'll keep remembering it and be happy over and over and over again. But what really gets me is that in order for Mr. Daniels to come up with this plan, he must have thought of me outside of school when he didn't have to think of me. I bet other teachers have never let me sit in their head 1 second longer than they had to. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 28. So this chapter, now the first chapter I read for this video wasn't a lot going on, not a big deal. This chapter is a huge deal. So we call this in a book, we call it the turning point. Have you ever heard of that, the turning point? So the turning point in a book is when it kind of changes directions. It kind of you might start to understand what's going on a little bit more, or you might start to feel a little bit more of where the book is heading. But it's definitely, the word turning point is definitely a change in the book. Okay. So what is the turning point in this book? What do you think is happening in this chapter with Mr. Daniels and Allie? He's asked her a couple of questions about when she reads, and then he kind of brings up this idea of chess. Why do you think that is? Um, so go ahead and write down your answers. Send that to me and Miss Whitener, and look for our video for the next day. Bye.